Know some JavaScript? Let's turn it into a simple cookie clicker game. You will learn the basics of HTML and how to connect HTML with JavaScript that they can work together. I have an empty project in Visual Studio Code. Let's start from the creating index.html file. Index.html is the name convention for the homepage of your web project. So if you have several HTML files, the main one is called index.html. Let's type something, for example, hello world. Then I save this file and I use live server extension to run this file in the browser. I click go live. And now in the browser, I see hello world. If your text is too small, you can click this zoom button and here you can change the zoom of this page. So we can type a text in our HTML file and it will be visible in our browser. But we have one problem. We can't control this text. So for example, on the second line, I add a new sentence. Then I save this file and refresh the browser. And now we see that even though that I wrote it on a new line, in the browser it is still on one line. And to control the text that we type in HTML files, we have tags. Let's close this Explorer. I just click Explorer icon. And now on a new line, I type P. Then I see a list of different options and I press enter to choose the first tag. And now you see two elements, the opening tag and the closing tag. And between them, we can add our text. And then if I save this file and refresh the page, we will see this sentence on a new line. You also have other tags for a text. For example, you can press H. From H1 to H6 are different header tags. The difference between them in the size of the text. So for example, I choose H1 and if I save this file, you see that the sentence, my header, is much bigger than other sentences. So now you know the basics of HTML. Let's start the creation of our project. For that, I delete all the content on this page. Then I type an exclamation mark. And now I see the first option, so I press enter. And now you see the basic structure of an HTML file. Let's save it and refresh the page. And now you see that our page is blank. And this is because all the elements that we see on our page should be inside body tag. All other lines that we see, they are just configuration of this file. For example, doctype.html defines the rule of HTML file. Then we have HTML tag where the language is defined. In our case, this is English. And then we have a head block. Here are different metadata that is used for accessibility and SEO, and then we have a title. This is a title for our project. Let's change it to cookie clicker. And now if I save this file, you can see that in the top of our browser, we see the name of our file, which is cookie clicker. But let's add some elements on this page. So we want to add a counter. For that we use p tag. I press P, then enter. And I also type count 0 because we start from the counter of 0. And the second element that we have in our game is a picture of a cookie. For that we have a separate tag image. I type img and then press enter. And now I can display the image on our website. But we actually need to have this image on our computer. So you can download it from my GitHub. For that, you can click on the first link in the description and then you will see this page. These are files from the video. So to download the image, click image, then cookie PNG, and now click download raw file. Now you need to create the same folder in this project. So I click new folder and I type image. Now I click on this folder and here I paste the image of the cookie. So I choose this image and then I just drag and drop it. And now in our folder, you see that we have cookie.png image. Make sure that this is inside of this folder. If you close it, you don't see cookie.png file anymore. So let's open it back. And I can close the cookie.png image here. Now in the source, I type image, then slash, and cookie.png. Now if I save this file, I will see an image of a cookie. We also should provide alternative attribute, and this is just a text that will be displayed if our program can't find the image. We can type something like cookie image. And for example, if I change this path, so I add 1 in the end and save this file, now you see this message cookie image instead of the picture. Let's return it back. And let's change the size of this image. For that, I can add a new attribute width. After the image tag and before the source attribute, I type width. And I can type something like 100 pixels. If I save it, we have a small image. And now I can zoom this page. So now we see both the image and the counter. And when we click our image, we want to increase our counter. So for that, we use JavaScript file. Let's open the Explorer and create a new JavaScript file. I call it script.js. Now we have two separate files, so we need to connect them together. For that, in the index.html file, in the head, right after our title, I press enter and type script column source. Now I can press enter. And here we can reference to our JavaScript file. So I type the name of the JavaScript file, script.js. Now our files are connected, we can start writing the JavaScript file. The first thing that we will do in our script.js file is the copy of the counter. Generally, we don't want to take the counter from the HTML, increase it, and set it back. We want to have a separate element that is responsible for the math in JavaScript, and then if I increase this counter, I want to change this text as well. And then I increase the counter again, and I change the HTML file again. So let's write a script that will do this work for us. I return back to 0. So we know that we can increase our counter, for example, by typing count++. This line will increase our counter by 1, but we also need to set the counter in the HTML file. For that, we need to access this element in the JavaScript. In the JavaScript, we have a method getElementById that returns the HTML element or null. We pass the ID to this method, and if this ID doesn't exist in our HTML file, countElement variable equals to null. But if it exists, we access our HTML element and we can change its properties. Currently, we don't have this ID in our index.html file, so let's add this attribute to our p tag. Right after p, I type ID and press enter. And now I need to pass the name of this ID. In our case, this is count. And now I can save this file. Now in the JavaScript, we have this element and we can change this text property. CountElement has a text content property. This is the text that you see right here, and we can set it to another value, for example, to count. But currently, if you save this file, you will not see any changes. So let's inspect this page. Do right click, then find inspect property, and now open the console. You will see the error that null element doesn't have the text content property. If you hover over count element, you will see that it can be equal to HTML element or null. And it is equal to null only if we don't have this ID in our HTML file. But we have this ID. What is the problem? This is a very common problem that HTML file reads the code line by line. And when it reaches the script line, it executes our JavaScript file. And at this point, we haven't initialized our body yet. So it means that we don't have all these elements. And this is the reason why our count element equal to null. We actually want to initialize all the HTML file before the JavaScript file. And for that, we have an attribute defer that we can put after the source attribute. Now I save this file and you see that our error is gone. And if you look at our page, you will see 1 instead of count column 0. So let's add count column in our JavaScript file as well. And now if I save this file, you see that our count is equal to 1. We want to change the count only when a user clicks on a cookie. For that, we need to track the state of the cookie. When a user clicks, he changes the state of this element. And on this change, we can increase our counter by 1. So let's do it step by step. First of all, we need to access the image element in the JavaScript file. For that, I will use getElementById method. I use the ID cookie, so let's add this ID to our image tag. Right after this tag, I add ID. Then I save this file. Now I wrote a large line. Cookie element has a method addEventListener, and this is a complicated method that can track the state of our element. Generally, we provide two parameters. The first parameter is what we are controlling. We are controlling the click of the user. So when this element is clicked, then we execute the second parameter. In our case, the second parameter changes the text content of the count element to a new count that we calculate in this file. If you remove the first property and add quotes, you will see all other options that we can control. I choose the click option. And when I save it, I see that our counter is equal to 1. And if we click our cookie, we don't see any changes. This is because when we provide our second parameter without wrapping it into a function, we immediately execute it. So let's wrap our parameter into a function. Now we increase our counter inside of this function, and then we set our text element to a new counter. When I save this file, you see that our counter is equal to 0. And if I click our cookie, we see that our counter is changing. Here is also one important detail. If you refer to your function, like here we have increase count name, so this is the name of our function, I don't use parentheses. If I type this parenthesis, it means that I immediately want to execute this function. So if I save this file, you will again see that our counter equal to 1. If I click the cookie, nothing changed. This small detail is very important because when you don't add this parenthesis, you refer to your function, and addEventListener function can automatically call it if a user clicks on the element. I hope that this project was interesting for you. In the next video, we will learn about CSS to style this game project.